ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपगदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातः सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त श्रीराधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्रीराधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। On behalf of ISKCON Chennai, we welcome all devotees for today's program. We are continuing the series of Gita appreciation lectures, which is basically meant to prepare us to dive deep into the message of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So, to recap the classes that we have already done, we have discussed about the search for happiness in the beginning. We said there are two kinds of happiness. One is preyas, which is based on the body and it is temporary and it is controlled by the senses. But the second type of happiness is called Shreyas, which is soul based, eternal, and it is the true nature of the soul, Satchit Ananda. So we said the right kind of happiness that all of us should seek is the Shreyas or the inherent, innate happiness which is present in the soul by virtue of the soul being part and parcel of the Supreme. The Supreme is Sachitananda, so the soul is also Sachitananda, but because of the coverings, we are unable to see our true nature. So we are wrongly identifying with the material body and we are looking for happiness through this body and the senses. And we are looking for it in the external world. So that was the first day's topic. Then we talked about, does God exist? There are so many arguments to say God does not exist. The main arguments are based on what I can actually see and perceive with my external senses, including my mind. I accept only that as reality. But we found that there are so many things which are beyond the perception of the senses, which also exist, which science is nowadays forced to admit that there are things that science does not understand because science is operating with a limited set of tools. These tools are like, a microscope, the telescope, the spectrometers, like that. And they even had a particle accelerator, which they constructed several kilometers under the Alps mountains at a cost of 15 billion plus dollars. So the science is trying to invent more and more sophisticated tools through which they want to discover the true nature of this material world. But up to date, they have only failed. So this is called Pratyaksha Pramana, that I will only accept what my senses tell me. But we said this kind of ascending process of cultivating knowledge is prone to a lot of mistakes, full of trial and error, and our senses are very defective. And also, human beings have a tendency to make errors and also to cheat. So, we said this ascending process of Pratyaksha Pramana is not the right way to look for God. We also talked about another process called Anumana Pramana. This is also an ascending process where, based on our observations, then we make some analysis and then we draw some speculative conclusions. Like, for example, Darwin made some observations, but the observations in themselves cannot lead to the conclusion that there is a evolution that is happening in the material world, that the whole material world came from matter only, that life is simply a byproduct of matter. All these are speculative conclusions. To say that there was a big bang, the earth came out of that is not based on observation. To say that man has come from monkey, there is no evidence or proof. It is simply speculative. So this Anumana Praman takes from the information gathered by our senses, and based on that it makes some speculative conclusions using our intellectual capabilities for imagining things. So that is called Anumana Praman. That also falls far short because of the same reasons what we listed above. So all the ascending process of gathering knowledge are defective. So then what is the best way of gathering knowledge about subtle and sublime subject matters? Then we came to the conclusion that Shabda Praman. Shabda Praman is the correct way. And what is Shabda? Shabda is basically the scriptures, the revealed scriptures of a higher being. A higher being means someone who is beyond material creation, and someone who is the source of everything that exists, and someone who has actually created this material world for a purpose that is best known to him. So the best way to gather knowledge is to depend on the descending knowledge. That's called Shabda Praman. Our scriptures like Vedas, Itihasas, Puranas, like that we discussed. That is the topic, does God exist? Then we came to the third topic is, if God exists, who is he or she? There we discussed about how to understand God based on the scriptures. We talked about gods and the demigods, who are basically the various administrative positions, and these are occupied by souls selected by the Supreme Lord. So there is one Supreme and he is God, and then the various devatas that we are worshipping, they are all empowered souls who are placed in various administrative positions in the universe by the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is Sri Krishna, as we understand from Bhagavad Gita and as confirmed by Adi Shankaracharya in Gita Mahatmyam. Supreme Lord is Krishna, and all the other devatas, we talked about 33 crore devatas, they are all his part and parcels. They are all his various organs, and they are all meant to serve him in administering this universe. They are souls like us, but they are empowered by virtue of the way they have lived their life. They have become qualified, and the Lord has placed them in different positions. When they are positioned, they are all given a fixed term. When the term ends, then they vacate that position and somebody else takes up. So we found out that up to the Brahma Loka, it is all part of this material universe, and even if you rise up to the level of Brahma, you have a limited lifespan, which is far higher than the lifespan in even Indraloka or Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka. Like that, there are various planetary systems which are above the earth, but everywhere there is a limited lifespan. And Brahma also has a limited lifespan, which is crores of times more than what we have in the material world. But then we came to know that the Supreme Lord is beyond Brahma, beyond the material creation, and he lives in the Vaikuntha planets, and we all are qualified to go there, provided we develop the qualifications what God expects us. That is, we have to purify our consciousness from all unwanted things. So that is what we discussed about who is God. And then who am I? We discussed that topic for another day. we found out that we are not the bodies, we are all spirit souls. The connection between the soul and the body is that of like a driver and a car. The car is always dead. The driver is the living person. By the presence of the driver inside the car runs and it honks and it turns left, right. It obeys the traffic signals. Everything is because the driver is present inside. So it is the relationship between body and soul is like we also compared to a computer hardware and the battery inside, which actually makes the hardware to work. Or you can even think of a battery operated toy. The toy is there, but once you put the battery only, the toy talks and walks and does so many things. But you remove the battery, then the toy is dead. Then we realize the toy is always dead. It is only the presence of the battery that makes the toy appear to be alive. So we came to know our bodies are also like that. They are constructed with material elements and it is always dead. It appears to present a scene of growing, becoming old, and eventually dying. All that is by the presence of the unchanging soul within. The soul travels through the various changes in the body, and at the final moment, it leaves the body and gets into another body. We also discussed about various scientific evidences that are surfacing nowadays, many cases of investigated reincarnation stories. We have also talked about near death experience that people almost died in the hospital, but they revived and they came up with very fantastic stories of when the body was lying in the operating table, they were going around and seeing things. Similarly, out of body experiences where the soul actually left the body and the person became dead, but somehow he revived after some time. And what happened during this time? They explained in such great detail, which everybody had to admit that it is fantastic. But how could, when the eyes are closed, when the heart has stopped, when there is no function happening within this body, how could this person have observed what was going on outside, what people are talking to each other, what kind of dress they were wearing, the happenings that were within the operating theater, etc. So, with all these things, we try to prove it that the soul actually exists and we are all the souls. We are not the material bodies that are subject to constant changes. We are actually spirit souls and we are eternal in nature, just like God. God is eternal in nature. We are also eternal in nature. But the difference between God and us is that God is the supreme living entity and we are all subordinate living entity. God is our maintainer and we are the maintained. So everything belongs to God. We also belong to God. So our perfection is to understand God and to serve Him with love and completely surrender our existence to Him. Then God will free us from this temporary, miserable material body and give us a permanent, eternal spiritual body and take us back to His own spiritual world. So now we are continuing. This is the fifth topic. Today we shall be talking about why do bad things happen to good people? This is a question that has always been in our minds. So this is the topic that we should be dealing with today. I am sure all of you have had these questions in your mind at some time or the other, or maybe even all the time. Why bad things happen to good people? This question automatically leads to more questions about God. What kind of questions are these? Let us see. Is God really good? Hmm? That is a question that comes up. Does, is God really good? And is God really loving? And is God really all powerful? Yeah, let us take these three questions. If God is really loving, will He allow sufferings to happen? If all the souls are His own children, would He like to see His children suffering? So perhaps God is not loving. Hmm? But then it is very difficult for us to accept that God is not loving. Then we move on. Okay, perhaps God is very loving, but He's not all that good. Huh? If He's a good person, He will not allow good people to suffer. Bad people can suffer, we can understand. But why do good people suffer? So maybe he has some wickedness in him. So he tries to put some good people in bad situations and he makes bad people enjoy their life. This is his way of having some fun. Maybe God is not completely good. So either he is not very loving or he is not very good. Or supposing he is both loving and good, then we come to the third question. Then maybe God is not all that powerful. Now, other than the Hindu religion, which we call it as Sanatana Dharma, these kind of questions are always plaguing the other religions of the world. Say Christianity or Islam, they have the serious problem of understanding whether God is really loving, good, and powerful. They are unable to reconcile. They have a fundamental problem because they don't accept the concept of reincarnation of the soul. They don't believe in rebirth. So they don't believe in karma. They don't understand that each person is born in a different situation, grows up in different situations, for which there is some underlying cause. The cause being his own karma. But they say, no, 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 this is only one birth. In this one birth, how you behave, God will observe, and accordingly, He will give you a reward or punishment at the end of this lifetime, and that is permanent. Either He will send you to a eternal hell or He will send you to a eternal heaven, where you will just go on enjoying. So it's a very incomplete understanding of God. In fact, the more you meditate on these concepts which the other religions give, the more you will start hating God. And that is actually happening. People are hating God. But what is happening? Right from the childhood, they are taken to places of worship and they are told, be careful with God. Don't play with God. God is a very punishing God. God is a very vengeful God. You know, these are the language they use. God is vengeful. So if you go against Him, He will catch you and punish you. And because God has got His angels everywhere, He is observing whatever you are doing. So better be careful. Better surrender to Him. Don't question Him. He doesn't like any questioning. You have to blindly accept Him. And you have to blindly accept what we tell you because we are His representatives. There is no explanation how God appointed you as the representatives, how you have taken that position yourself. No, you are not allowed to ask questions because right from childhood, this kind of brainwashing happens. Like even in our own case, we went to school at the age of say even 4 or 5, and then we were given books and we had our teachers. So how many of us would have questioned what was taught to us? Because we are so small and the teacher is so grown up and so knowledgeable and the books are given to us, we accept the books as the absolute truth. And what the teacher tells us as absolute truth. So the brainwashing starts from school. And in the school, supposing they don't teach you about God, but they teach you about the Darwin's theory, then where is your hope of ever really developing faith in God? So these are our dangerous situations in the current world. So this question of is God simultaneously all powerful, all loving, and all good is not explained in any of the religions except the Hindu Dharma, what we call Sanatana Dharma, by using the concept of transmigration of the souls, eternal soul, continuous rebirth based on our desires and actions, and we get the results of our own actions coming back to us, like a boomerang or a ball thrown into the wall, how it comes back. Same way, our own actions come back to us. This we will see in the coming slides. But it is only here these answers are given. So increasingly we find in the Western world, people are becoming more and more atheistic, irreligious, because after receiving an education in school where you are taught how you must question everything, so you start questioning God. But unfortunately, nobody has a scientific understanding of God. and so they are unable to explain to you God. So when you have a questioning nature which is developed in the school, but there is no Shabda Pramana which can completely satisfy you, then you become gradually atheist. So all the Western countries which are broadly believed to belong to some religion or the other, but the people are mostly atheistic, not by their fault, but because there has been no systematic scientific cultivation of knowledge of the soul and knowledge of God. So we will now go into more details of these questions, how they are beautifully explained and how they are highly convincing using a pure common sense approach. This subject we have discussed in our Gita Mahatmyam, but here we will go into slightly more detail or in different dimensions. Bhagavad Gita talked about 5 topics. Number 1 is Ishvara or God, who is the creator of everything. We called him as creator, maintainer, destroyer. But not only that, he is the supreme proprietor of everything. He is the owner of everything. And he is the controller of everything. Whatever, even a blade of grass cannot move without his permission. The wind blows, the sun rises and sets with his permission. He is completely in control of everything from the tiniest atom to the largest universe. It is under his control and he is the proprietor. Isavasyamidam sarvam. Whatever exists belongs to him. That is what the Ishopanishad says. And finally, he is the enjoyer. Why did he create everything? Not only he created this material world, he also created the spiritual world. Why he has created? The answer comes for his own enjoyment. Because he only existed in the beginning. He only will exist in the end. And in the middle also, only he exists. Immediately you will get a question, then who am I? Am I existing or not? These answers will come. Of course, I will answer you right away so that you don't carry this confusion. We are all part and parcel of God. So we also exist. How God is eternal, his part and parcels are also eternal. We are his part and parcels. So we are also eternal. So, but being part and parcels of God, we are also God. In that sense, only God is there in the beginning and in the end, and in the middle also, only God exists. But by the will of God, he has made a distinction between the souls and himself, eternal distinction. His parts and parcels are eternally differentiated from him. So we are differentiated from God, and that is forever. We cannot become God. Fortunately, it's a very good thing. Only by being separate from God, only by having a separate existence from God, we can develop this beautiful relationship of love, prema with God, and enjoy that prema in so many different ways. We have already discussed it in various classes in Krishna Leela and in Gita Mahatmya. We will continue to discuss. But anyway, it is God who is the supreme and he is the source of everything. Janmadiyasya yataha. That means all creation, maintenance, destruction, everything comes from him. That is the understanding of God. Secondly, Jiva. I already told you, Jiva is the part and parcel of God. And what is the nature of the Jiva? The perfect nature of the Jiva is to love God totally. And if you love somebody, what you do? You surrender to that person. That is true surrender, not the artificial surrender, which is an external surrender. The true surrender happens only in love. So when the Jiva understands that he is a part and parcel of Krishna and his business is to serve him without any motivation, without any personal motivation, that is his perfect constitutional position. When the Jiva understands that and then he starts serving without any reservation, Jiva becomes as joyful as God. There is a transcendental competition between God and the Jiva. Who can serve better? God is serving Jiva, Jiva is serving God. That is the relationship between both of them. They are both eternal, mind you. So the relationship between God and soul is eternal. And the joy and love that binds both of them is eternal. Now we come to something called Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. The moment we say nature, we have to ask whose nature. So whose nature? It is Ishvara's nature. That is called Prakriti. In other words, it is the energy of Ishvara. Prakriti is the energy of Ishvara. So Ishvara has got unlimited energies. And the most prominent ones we will discuss here under Prakriti. So this whole material world is coming out of his Prakriti. Entire material world, what we are seeing, is his Prakriti. We are talking about earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, intelligence, false ego. These are all part of his Prakriti. They are separated from him, but they are still his own energies. By his inconceivable power, these energies have been separated from him, and through these, the jiva is able to have different experiences. So the entire material world is part of Prakriti. I will also introduce you to a higher concept of Prakriti in the following slides. But also remember, jiva is also a Prakriti. Jiva is also a Prakriti. That means jiva is also an energy of Ishvara. Prakriti is one more energy of Ishvara. What is the difference? Prakriti does not display life. Jiva displays life. So Jiva is called superior energy in this material world. This material world is constituted by apparently dead elements, Jada. But Jiva is alive. So Jiva is the superior energy of Ishvara, and the Jiva has come into this inferior energy called material nature, and he is trying to control the material nature. In the process of trying to control, own, and enjoy the material nature, Jiva is caught in a illusion, because the fact is only God is the owner, enjoyer, and controller. When Jiva tries to take that position, Jiva gets into a lot of problems. We will get into more detail in future classes. And fourthly, there is Kala, time. We will explain that also in detail. What is time doing in this matrix of understanding what is going on around us? Ultimately, karma. Please remember, out of these, the first four are eternal, but fifth one is not eternal. That is our hope. Karma has a beginning and an end, but all the other four are eternal. So the jiva has to escape from karma, and then he can return to Ishvara. We will see in the coming slide. And what is this? This is a mustard seeds. So many tiny mustard seeds. Our universe, I'm not talking about our planet. Our universe is as insignificant as one of these mustard seeds. Can you believe? Our universe is just one of these mustard seeds. Then there are so many mustard seeds. Like you can imagine a gunny bag full of mustard seeds. Our universe is just one of the mustard seeds in the gunny bag. Can you understand how insignificant our universe becomes? And what about us? That is how insignificant our universe is. There are as many universes as there are mustards in a gunny bag full of mustard seeds. So all these universes, if you take together, they are only 1/4 of the entire creation. This is all we learn from scripture. We are talking about material universes. Our universe is one of the material universes. Our universe, there is a Brahma. You remember? The first created person in this universe is Lord Brahma. He came from the navel of Lord Vishnu. And that whole setup is one universe. One Anda. We call Brahma Anda. Right? So in every Brahma Anda, there is a Vishnu, and in his navel, the Brahma is coming out, and he is creating the entire universe. That is one mustard seed for you. One mustard seed. Within that, so much is happening. Similarly, there are so many universes with so many Vishnus and so many Brahmas. But the difference is the same Vishnu is there in all the universes, but a different Brahma is there in every universe. This point you please understand, because Brahma is a position. A soul is occupying that. One soul will occupy the position of Brahma in one universe. Another soul will occupy position of Brahma in another universe. But the Vishnu who gives rise to that Brahma is the same in every universe. In future, you will get more details, but please carry this with you. Vishnu is always one. It's not a position. What is Prakriti? So I talked about the material world in the earlier slide as Prakriti. But please understand that is only 1/4 of Prakriti. The entire material world is 1/4 of the Prakriti of the Supreme Lord. But another 3/4 is the spiritual world. The material world is full of stress, tension, anxiety, misery, suffering. That's all grouped under the epithet Kunta. Kunta means there is a lot of suffering, there is a lot of uncertainty, there is a lot of hankering, there is a lot of lamenting, there is a lot of birth, old age, disease, death, adi atmik, adi daivik, adi klesh, adi bhautik kleshas, sufferings. But the 3/4, which is spiritual world, none of these things are there. On the contrary, spiritual world is full of joy and love. That is a spiritual world, where the God personally exists along with pure devotees. Who are the devotees? They are also souls, but they are eternally there in the spiritual world. They don't change their bodies, they don't transmigrate from body to body, and they don't undergo birth, old age, disease, and death. They are always happy and they have the permanent association of God. In the material world, we don't have the association of God. We have forgotten God. As a consequence, we are always struggling to find happiness in our life. But everything put together is expansion of the energies of God, and that is called Prakriti. So there is material nature and there is spiritual nature. Both are nature, and both are energies of God. By the will of God, both material world and spiritual world exist. Spiritual world exists for the pure souls who have no selfishness. They have fully realized that they are eternally the loving servants of God. They are in the spiritual world. And in the material world, recalcitrant souls, souls that are rebellious, souls that challenge the authority of God, souls that feel I can enjoy independently, I would like to control and own things like the Supreme Lord is doing. Those people, rebellious, unlawful, law breaking souls, they are in the material world. But this is not unlike some other religions preach you, this is not a eternal hell. Material world is actually a hell, but it is not an eternal hell. Once you learn the rules, once you agree to abide by the rules, you become a law abiding citizen. Then you are no longer in the prison. So here we are quoting from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Mamupetyatu punarjanma dukkhalayama shashvatam napnuvante mahatmanaha samsiddhim paramam gata. Krishna is telling Arjuna, Arjun, those souls that have surrendered to me, they don't come to this world which is a dukkhalayam. Dukkhalayam means collection of suffering. However much we may argue, no, there is a lot of happiness in this world, but Krishna, who is the creator, has declared that this material world is dukkhalayam. It's a place of unlimited suffering. And ashashvatam, always temporary. Even if you say you are happy now, that is temporary, Krishna says. What is the use of temporary happiness when we are eternal souls? What is the use? Even if you have 100 years of happiness, that is nothing because your nature is eternal, your existence is eternal. Same thing in another shloka, Krishna calls material world as anityam, not nityam, anityam, asukham, no happiness here, lokam, temporary world. So Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita. So material world is actually a jail. We have to understand that the material world in which we are living is actually a jail. How interesting. We think in our Chennai city, there is a jail. In Delhi, in Bombay, in every major town, you have a jail. And you think, oh, so we are all free citizens. India is an independent country. We are no longer slaves of the British masters. So we are all independent, we say. And we have a jail only to put the lawbreakers there. And so that one day they will get reformed and then they will be allowed to live along with us as free citizens. But actually, the whole material world is a jail. Why jail? Because God has created material world as a jail, and the purpose is to reform the law-breaking souls. What is the reform that is required? God wants to teach everyone, you will find happiness only in my association. When you go away from me, you cannot be happy. That lesson God wants us to learn. Once we learn, He will happily embrace us and take us back to His eternal kingdom to live with Him forever, sharing whatever wealth He has and sharing whatever enjoyment is there with Him. The child inherits the father's property. We are all children of God, so we have every right to enjoy our father's property when we go back to the spiritual world. This material world is only a jail. So, why did God create this jail? So, the question, what to do with antisocial elements? Supposing you are a city administrator and there are some people, most of the people are good, they abide by the law, but some people are antisocial. Yeah? They steal, they commit some murders, they tell lies, they give problems to people. Because of them, other people are suffering. What you want to do with them? Shoot them down? That is one option. Finish them off then and there. When you have to do that, when you have given up on them, when you have no hope on them, then what choice do you have? This person will never change. When you are sure about that, you shoot him down. No other way. Because there is a limit up to which we can take care of people, right? Somebody is a murderer, somebody is a serial murderer, and somebody deliberately plans and kills people. The government says, I don't have patience with you, and I cannot keep you in the prison, nor can you allow you to go free. I will shoot you down, finish you off, so that others will learn by seeing your example. This we have in this material world, but God never gives up on the souls because the souls are His children. First of all, you have to understand God never makes mistakes. So all the souls will one day become pure and one day go back to God. This is the essence of our Sanatana Dharma. This is the essence of our religion, that all the souls will one day go back to God. All the souls are children of God. They are here only to learn their lessons. If somebody learns a lesson quickly, they will quickly go back to God. 1 minute is also enough if you learn the lesson sincerely. But if you otherwise, you can take your time. So, what is the second option? Instead of shooting down, what is the second option? Give a chance to improve. That is how the jail is there. Jail is there where there is a separate jail administration. They may make you break stones, they may make you go out in the hot sun and prepare a nice garden or do some work. Hmm? Like that, they will slowly convert you into a law abiding citizen. You will start regretting your past mistakes and you will change. So these are the two options. So God has created this material world for all the antisocial souls. He never shoots anybody down, nor he puts anybody eternally in hell. So what mistake have I done? So here God explains in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7:27, Ichadvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoha sarge yanti parantapa. So because of desires, the dualities of liking something, disliking something, hating something, desiring something, this nature has brought the spirit soul into a wrongful existence where the soul thinks, I want this, I don't want this, I want to enjoy this, I want to avoid this. With that kind of a nature, because of illusion. Why illusion? Because everything is God. There is nothing to be liked or disliked. The duality should not be there. You have to see everything belongs to God and everything is God, and including I am also God. God's, I belong to God. My body belongs to God. My mind, intelligence, my possessions, everything belongs to God. That understanding, if I have, then I go back to God. But If I make a distinction between God and the energy of God, I say, I don't want God, but I want to enjoy the energy of God. Remember what Ravana did? Ravana took away Sita, who is actually the part of God. She is the energy of God. She is the pleasure potency of God. He said, I want to take her. I want to kill Ram. Such souls are all put into this material world. They want to enjoy God's energy, so God has separated his energy and created this material world. He has hidden himself because we don't want God. He has hidden himself and he has put us here. So this is how the wrong desiring of the souls has brought us to this material world. Our desire to enjoy away from God, that has brought us to this material world. And look at this. This is Vishnu, and you can see Durga. Durga is folding her hands to Vishnu and accepting his orders. What orders? He says, all the law breaking souls, I am putting them in your custody. Durga Devi is the mistress of the whole material creation. Her job is to go on giving trouble to the souls in this material world so that they will surrender to God, saying, I am incompetent to manage myself. I have got into all this trouble by my own fault. I am now ready to surrender. Oh God, please save me. Until such time, she gives troubles so that the soul finally will surrender to God and go back to Him. Once we realize that this material world cannot be controlled by me because this is the energy of Krishna. Durga Devi is the energy of Krishna. So she will only serve Krishna. She will not serve me. She is serving me actually. How she is serving me? She is serving me by giving problems so that I will return to Krishna. This place is not meant for enjoyment. This place is meant for suffering. So she administers that suffering to all of us so that one day we will desire to go back to God. So that is her role. And she is the energy of Krishna. We saw Prakriti, no? So she is the Prakriti of the material world. So here we are seeing a jail. In jail, some people are in A-class cell. A-class cell. See here, the policeman is asking the thief. Saab is asking whether you need anything more. He's 420. He is enjoying here. So in some prisoners get better facilities, but not exactly like this. But some people are called prisoners of conscience, like that. In jail, political prisoners, they are given some facilities. That is called a A-class cell. Why we are giving this example? Sometimes we find in this material world some people are enjoying. We feel they are very wealthy, they are very famous, they are having a lot of influence, they are having a lot of knowledge, and they are really having a lot of friends and enjoying this world. We think like that. So they are in A-class cell. So how do you get promoted to a A-class cell? If you put in good behavior. So those souls that are putting good behavior in this world, at best they can go to A-class cell. Good behavior. They don't do wrong things. They move into A-class cell. Otherwise, people are in the normally B-class cell. They are not allowed to interact with people. They cannot go out, etc. But remember, here also, the thief is sitting inside a cell. He cannot open the gate and go. So he's still in jail. Remember that. He is having facilities, but he still cannot leave. What is that jail? That jail is the material body. Our material body is subject to old age, disease, and death. So even somebody who is very wealthy in this world and very famous in this world, he has to undergo old age, disease, and death, and rebirth. So that is why we say, at best, you can have a A-class cell, but you are still in prison. The entire material world is prison. The world's wealthiest man, the world's most handsome man, Mr. Universe, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. President, all of them are, you can say they are perhaps in A-class cell. But what is the use of in a A-class cell? You are still not free, remember that. So it's not a good aspiration that I am in a B-class cell, I would like to graduate to A-class cell. Not a very good aspiration. Our aspiration should be to get out of the jail forever and never to return. Then we go back to Krishna. And what is C-class cell? Complete isolation. They have huge walls there is no window, and the prisoner only gets his food from the bottom of the door. Some gap is there, food is pushed, he cannot even see people. So there is C-class cell. In this material world also, we can imagine people living in all these different conditions. Some people are in abject poverty, some people are in abject slavery, bonded labor and all that. Some people are living in some homes and they are completely ill-treated and exploited. So there is C-class cell. B-class cell is somewhat like ordinary citizens, and A-class cell is, okay, the wealthy, influential people, you can say that. So we are all in jail ultimately. What is happening in this jail? So here we are introducing you to the concept of three modes of material nature. You can see here three uh, angels are there in the sky having some ropes, threads, and at the bottom you see two men, they are like puppets. So they are controlled by the strings what these three women are holding in their hands. They represent Sattva, Rajo, Tamo gunas. The golden color is Sattva, the red color is Rajoguna, and black color woman represents Tamoguna. So these two people who are seeing, they are controlled by these gunas. What are these gunas? We will see. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the entire material world is composed of these three gunas. Gunas means qualities. Gunas also means ropes in Sanskrit. Rope. So we are all bound by these ropes. What are these ropes? They are gunas, qualities, natures, the way one's consciousness works. Our consciousness is differently colored at different times. So you can say these are the three colors our consciousness takes. That means our consciousness is never pure. Our consciousness is either covered by the golden color or by the red color or by the black color, but it is never like a crystal clear. So these are the colors that are influencing our consciousness. We will go into some detail. So we saw about goodness. Goodness is the highest quality. That's why it is compared to a golden chain. What does goodness do? It seeks knowledge. So those who are constantly seeking knowledge, they are in the mode of goodness. You can even say the scientists, the philosophers, the social workers, people who are always trying to go for something higher consciousness. That is called goodness. Goodness always seeks higher knowledge, higher knowledge. Knowledge makes them happy. Knowledge, they feel, liberates them. Ignorance, they cannot tolerate. So from ignorance, they are always trying to move upward. That is called the mode of goodness. And what about passion? They have unlimited desires. That is the hallmark of passion. A passionate person, he is in Rajoguna. Goodness means Sattva-guna. Passion means Rajoguna. And ignorance means Tamoguna. So ignorance means it's a madness. In passion, a person has unlimited desires. Whereas in goodness, he only seeks knowledge. And in ignorance, he is in madness. So a mad person, what he will do? He is neither having the desires of passion, nor he is interested in knowledge. He has gone into the total darkness of ignorance. Secondly, a person in goodness is likely to live a life free from sin. He likes to be virtuous. He likes to display good qualities. He doesn't like to invite into his heart hatred, anger, fear, exploitation of others, untruth. These things he doesn't like. He's more and more likely to display good, virtuous, pious qualities. So he's a pious person. A person in goodness is a virtuous person. A person in passion is always working towards some goal. He either wants to have a big bungalow, big car, lot of servants, he wants to have a big farmhouse, or sometimes he may even try to serve others passionately. He may want to improve his community, he may want to improve his nation. Even that is a passion, because he thinks it is in his power to change things, and he is always working for that. He is always working hard for results. When he gets the result, he is happy, but many times he doesn't get the result, then he becomes depressed. So a man in passion is like a pendulum swinging between left and right. He is always working hard for different results. man in ignorance is a lazy man because he has no goal in life, no desire in life. So he is absolutely unaware of spirituality. A man in goodness experiences a sense of happiness. But the problem with the sense of happiness is he is also conditioned by that happiness. He becomes bound to this material world because he enjoys a life of seeking. He enjoys by gathering more and more knowledge, but he always remains within the material world. He lives a good life comparatively, like a A-class prisoner, but he is still in the material world. He cannot go back to God. He does good activities, punya. He is always doing punya and he's enjoying the results of his punya. Good things. He does a lot of charity and all that without even expecting reward for that. He's doing charity. He's that nature. He's helpful in nature, but that makes him conditioned. A passionate man, the foundation of passion is attraction with the opposite sex. Striyo Pumsa, Maituni Bhavameta. Our Shastra says the attraction of man and woman is the foundation of the passionate activity in the material world. So a passionate man has the sex desire which is driving him. And a man of ignorance is totally intoxicated in the bodily concept of life and he is tending to do always the wrong things. He will be a drunkard, he will be a smoker, he will be using drugs, he will never hesitate to tell lies or exploit people. His nature will be like that. So, uh, what is the difference between goodness and ignorance? What a man in goodness appreciates, a man in ignorance hates. So, what is day for a man in goodness is like a night for the man in ignorance. So, this is polar opposite. Tamoguna and Satvaguna are polar opposite. That is the point made out here by quoting Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, shloka 69. When the man in ignorance is active, a man in Sattva doesn't like that. You remember, you can think of people who become very active late in the night. They go to club, they go to pub, they go to late night movies, they go to do unlawful activities. They are all active in the night. That is the time a man in goodness sleeps. And a man in goodness wakes up around 4 o'clock in the morning. He wants to recite prayers, he wants to think some good thoughts, and he wants to meditate, etc. That is the time a man in ignorance is sleeping. Just to give an idea of how stark the difference is. Similarly, they listen to different kinds of music. A man in goodness may hear classical music or bhajans, etc. A passionate man listens to rock music and things like that. And a person in ignorance, they have a very pathetic sense of music. And here we see somebody administering drugs through injections. So now we shall talk about the nature of food which is preferred by people who are under the influence of different modes of nature. Fundamentally, we have to understand that the kind of food that we eat influences our thoughts. And also, the kind of mode which is influencing us, it also dictates the kind of food that we eat. So there is a close interaction between what we eat and what we think, speak, and do. These gunas are practically like ropes that are binding our existence. And food plays a very major role in deciding whether our gunas are becoming strengthened or weakened. Are we graduating from a lower guna to a higher guna, etc. So it is very important to know what kind of food will come under what kind of guna so that we can try to change our guna. If we are in tamogun, we can try to move to rajogun and further to sattvagun. So let us see what kind of foods are preferred by sattvaguni people. They eat such food that will increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, happiness, and satisfaction to the body, mind, and soul. So, automatically, when you eat sattvic food, these things happen to you. You get more happiness, more satisfaction, more good health and strength, and longer life. So, what are these foods? Juicy foods, you can say generally bland food, juicy, fatty, wholesome. They are freshly cooked. You don't allow them to go stale. They are freshly cooked, eaten within 3 hours of cooking. And these foods are pleasing to the heart. They don't produce bad side effects like loose motion, heartburn, acidity, etc. It generally makes you feel healthy, happy, and strong. That is the sattvic kind of food. So it is strictly a vegetarian kind of food, sattvic food. Milk and milk products are very much included in sattvic food, especially cow's milk and cow milk based products are of sattva gun. So that is why cow protection was given a lot of importance in India since historic times, including the Vedas. Milk is given a place of prominence. Why? Because it helps to develop sattva gun. Not only sattva gun, it also helps us to transcend all the three gunas and become spiritual. That is the power of sattvic food. And now we will go to Rajasic food. Again, I am reminding you, people in Rajogun are very passionate. They are driven by the sexual attraction between opposite sexes. And they are very passionate about achieving their goals, whether it is good or bad, whether it is short term or long term, whether it will bring them temporary sense happiness, but they fix some goal and they work for it. Once that goal is achieved, they will fix another goal. If there is a failure in the goal, they become disappointed, dejected, depressed. When they achieve the goal, they claim that, see how powerful I am, how strong I am, how willpowered I am. I am a self-made man. I can achieve whatever goal I set for myself, like that. So they will be swinging. So what kind of food they eat? Very strong foods. Bitter, sour, salty, hot, pungent, dry, no juice, burning, causes acidity. So it causes them distress, misery, and disease, and shortens their lifespan. So we can understand that we should try and avoid Rajoguna food. And ultimately, tamoguna, food which is more than 3 hours old becomes tamoguna automatically after cooking, except prasadam. Except prasadam offered to Krishna, that retains its transcendental quality. But any other food kept more than 3 hours, it becomes tamogun. Tasteless. It starts spoiling. So it gives pungent smell. It's decomposed. Putrid smell comes. Smell of rotting food and untouchable. People would even not like to touch it. That kind of food is preferred by people in Tamogun. What has been already touched by somebody's lips, eaten by the cat or a dog or by somebody, the juta, that food they like to eat. Stale food. They keep it in the fridge for 1 week, 10 days. They may keep it in the freezer for months together, cooked food, and they may take out, heat it, and eat. The microwave kind of warming that we do these days, it's all extremely tamogun producing. No wonder we are becoming forgetful. We are becoming, ignorant. We are losing interest in spiritual subject matters, and we are generally in anxiety and worry. It's all coming from eating the wrong kinds of foods. So, with this, we come to the end of today's session. Actually, today's topic was, why do good people have to experience suffering, bad things, why they happen to good people. So, we have already covered Jiva, Ishvara, Prakriti, and the three gunas. Tomorrow, we will discuss two major subjects called Kala and Karma. With that, we will be able to get a complete picture of what do people experience in their lives, whether good things or bad things, whether it happens to good people or bad people. What is the logic behind it? It is not that God is not loving or not powerful or not good. It is the result of our own actions. We shall see tomorrow. Today we will come to the end of this session. Thank you very much for participating. I look forward to having all of you in tomorrow's session also. Let us all chant the Maha Mantra, and let us thank Srila Prabhupada for his mercy and blessings upon us. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.